Okay, welcome all on behalf of Tamar Italy. Welcome to Uri Dromi and to Israel Shafir that are here with us today to talk about the situation in Israel and the protests. I would like to first introduce our guest. Uri Dromi is a former colonel of the Israeli Air Force. He was also the spokesman for Rabin and Peres government from 1992 to 1996. He was director of publication at the Israeli Democracy Institute and is founder of the Jerusalem Press Club. Israel Shafir is a former Israeli Air Force Brigadier General. He was one of the pilots who participated in the famous 1981 mission Operation Opera, the destruction of the Iraqi nuclear reactor in Osirak. He served as commander of Israel Flight School at the airbase of Hatzerim and as commander of the Tel Nov Air Base. Both Uri and Israel and Relik are, if I remember correctly, on the steering committee of the protest for the pilot. And I would like also to give a thank to Italy and to the Italian Federation for Progressive Judaism who are helping us host this event today, and in particular a thank to the Oramim Reform community of Bologna who is helping us and hosting us on their Zoom platform tonight. Before starting our event, I would like to asked to invite Benjamin Fantini, who is the representative of Italy, to give us a welcome address. Please, Ben.
Thank you very much. Good evening to everyone. As Vittorio said, my name is Ben Fantini, and I'm the representative of Italy and vice chair of the European Union for Progressive Judaism. We are very delighted to have with us this evening Mr. Uri Dromi and Mr. Israel Shafir. We at Artsenu, the political and Zionist arm of the Jewish progressive movement, are extremely worried at the present political situation in Israel. It is very important that programs like these shed light on the developments on the ground in our country, Israel. I would like to thank Vittorio Mascherini of Tamar Italy for organizing this program, which is starting also the younger generation. Thanks also to FIAP, the Italian Federation for Progressive Judaism, for the support and sponsorship this evening. Thanks again to all and for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you. So let's start. Uri, I wanted to ask you, when we meet this May in Tel Aviv, you were saying to me that you believe that this government was gonna be a short-lived government. Are you still of the same opinion after the first overall passing, the first overall law passing?
Well, Vittorio, in order to live in Israel, you need to be optimist, and pessimism is not an option. Just look at what our fathers and mothers have accomplished here in this country. They wouldn't do it without optimism, without vision, without hope. And I think we should stick to the same state of mind. Now, in my family, I'm the only optimist, and everybody thinks I'm naive, because my optimism is not based in reality, they say. But I keep telling them that without hoping for something, it will never happen. So, but hope is not enough. I look at what happened in the last 6 months or so, and I see the emergence of a movement. It's not just protest, you know, every Saturday night we go either to Kaplan, which is in Tel Aviv, or last night I went to Herzliya. People go it's more than that. It's a understanding among big section of the Israeli society. The people who work, the people who serve, the people who really push the high tech, the medicine, the agrotech, all the accomplishments that we're so proud of. All these people realize that something very bad is about to happen. And it really dawned on us after the election like a bombshell. And all these people who take to the streets, they will not stop at killing this specific, what they call judicial reform, what we call constitutional coup. The people who take to the streets understand that really we're fighting for the basic of democracy. And not only democracy, but what kind of life we're going to live here in Israel after 75 years of existence, when really we have former President Relik called it tribes. The ultra-Orthodox, the Arabs, us, secular or non-Orthodox Jews, etc. How are we going to live together? So I'm still optimistic because I see these people, and these people will go to the ballots next time because many of them didn't. In the last elections, it was estimated that some 300,000 people who could vote just didn't vote. I mean, from our camp. I say our, meaning Democrats, liberals, etc. They didn't vote. They will vote this time. Now, to your question, will it happen tomorrow or next week or 6 months from now? I don't know. But I see the power of the people saying to this government, you're doing something to which we vehemently oppose. And in a democracy, a government can't, for a long time, carry on policy that the majority of the people oppose. And in poll after poll, public opinion poll, most Israelis say loud and clear, they are against this. And therefore, and Netanyahu, now coming to Netanyahu, and feel free to cut me whenever you feel like I'm talking too long. Netanyahu cares about two things. One is to get away from trial. I think you had a Berlusconi in the past, so you know what I'm talking about. I mean, all the time, politics is only a vehicle, a tool to pursue personal interests. You know that. And the second thing he's interested in is legacy. I don't know if you remember, but he kept talking about himself and mentioning Churchill, mentioning this, that. Not anymore. Iran is a failure. Hezbollah is a failure. Economy, the banks and the companies are telling us, watch it. Everywhere you turn, there's failure. So he hopes to do something with the Saudis. We'll see. It involves the Americans. But to come back to your question, Netanyahu will, at one point, would like to break away from the extremists, from Smotrich, from Levin, from Ben-Gvir, the people who make him do things that the old Netanyahu, or the young Netanyahu, if you want, but Netanyahu before 2015, wouldn't do. And therefore, my prediction is that this government will fall either because Netanyahu will understand that going on with this reform will kill the Likud, and already we see cracks there. And therefore, he will try to break away from the radicals and tell Gantz, you'll be I don't know if Gantz will swallow the bait again, but we'll see. But this way, or Smotrich and Ben-Gvir will pull out because Netanyahu will not be able to push ahead the expansionist policy that they want. These people, I hope you understand, they believe that between the Jordan River and the sea, there should be only one country, and that's a Jewish country, and all the rest should be second-rate citizens, and if there is an opportunity, they should really go away. Netanyahu cannot subscribe to this policy, not because he's such a great Democrat, but because of the Americans. And therefore, my prediction is that we'll see this government fall. And one condition for this is the ongoing protest, because if you know what's going on, people are not only protesting once a week in Tel Aviv or elsewhere, but they are really following the politicians everywhere they go and reminding them, sometimes in nasty ways, because that's the nature of protest. Reminding them you're doing something which the majority of us don't support, and you should stop.
Sorry, Uri. I think it's also very interesting to see that in many ways today the protesters are really among like the best parts of Israel. We are talking about professionals, we're talking about doctors, we are talking about high-tech workers, and we are talking also, in fact, about people who are in reserve duty in the army, in Sherut Miluim. And I wanted to ask to Relik Shafir specifically, we've seen this enormous movement of reserve duty people who are refusing to do Sherut Miluim because of the current action of the government and the Knesset. But we saw also a lot of members of the government. I think that the most recent one, Ben-Gvir, who has posted the famous video about the pilots refusing to serve and letting the infantry soldier die, which I might find it's very disturbing in my opinion. Look, Ben-Gvir, not only he never fly a F-16 with Syrian MiG-21 coming at him, but he never did even military service. So I wanted you to address like why you think it's important that reserve duty soldiers are part of this protest, are part of this movement, and what do you think of the damage that the government is doing by saying all this kind of stuff against reserve duty soldiers refusing to serve in the IDF?
Just one correction. These are people not refusing to serve. These are people who are already in a volunteering stage for different reasons, either through age or through the fact that they are required to report to duty on an immediate call, 4 or 8 hour call, and therefore they're in a volunteering position. Of those, some of those who are pilots fly 1 day a week to keep their operational readiness, and doing this for many, many years. The feeling of the reservists that we're talking about is that the government had broken away from the bond that was created between the country and the people of how this country is run. This is a liberal, Democrat, Jewish country. That's the way it was established 75 years ago. the code of the army talks about democracy, and the fact that this particular government, who half of their members didn't serve in the military, or either did a very short service, or either were refused, just like Ben-Gvir, to be drafted. And they're dictating a move away from liberal democracy into hollow democracy and the dictatorship, following the lines of Poland and Hungary and Turkey. And therefore, they're actually breaking the agreement that of how this country operates as part of the Western world. So breaking away from the Western world into a clerical, aggressive, possessive position is a breach of trust. So 70% of Israelis who were polled, including members of the Likud, think that this coup, constitutional coup, should be stopped. And if any changes, welcome changes, should be taken in, they should be instrumental in actually having a widespread agreement rather than a short, very slim majority that this particular coalition has. So this break of trust brought these volunteers into saying, I don't want to volunteer for a country that is overstepping judicial system and will not be, there will not be checks and balances where a pilot, for instance, can feel sure that the echelon of decisions at which he's at the end delivering thousands of pounds of kilograms of bombs is being used in a correct manner. So they said, we will not volunteer anymore, and we will put pressure on the government to change its ways. Once it does, we will come back. But a breach of trust is the name of the game. And unfortunately, at this time, we're seeing more and more of these clerical laws that are being pushed in the Knesset, and therefore the breach of trust just grows and grows until it will, at some stage, implode into some kind of a change in government, elections of something of the sort. And who knows better than Italy that saw so many governments change during the years. But this is not just a change of government. This is a change of the soul of the country. It goes against the Jewish idea of Hillel and Shammai, where the idea of Hillel is we will listen to Shammai, to the words of other people before we make decisions. This is not what this government is doing, and this is part of the breach of trust, not just with the public, but also with Jewish tradition.
Thank you.
Vittorio, if I may,
Yeah, sure.
you mentioned the clip about the so-called pilot not willing to assist infantry soldier in distress. I think one of the worst thing that Netanyahu and his people did was to break the solidarity of Israelis. Because if you ask yourself, how come we stood up against the Arab armies or the Yom Kippur War, etc., it was the solidarity, the feeling that if something happened to you, somebody will come to your help and will risk their life to save you. And the fabricated clip was so mean, so cheap, so wrong. It never happened, these kind of things. But the people of Netanyahu, and Netanyahu, by the way, is a master of the media, and he knows how to manipulate the news and the media. in the social media especially, in a way that you don't detect his fingerprints. Okay, it's always somebody else. Somebody says, somebody sent out, he knows everything. And he has people who know exactly what he wants, and they do it, and they keep him away so he can wash his hands and say, I didn't know, or no, you shouldn't say these things, etc. So I would say this is really the worst thing that is happening, and I'm not surprised that Nasrallah and others are looking at this and saying, you know what, these stupid Israelis are doing our job. Why bother? Look what they're doing to themselves. Of course, they're miscalculating and they're wrong, because if something happens, everybody will come, including the people who now consider not coming, etc. But I must emphasize the fact that really we're talking here about the bad government, a government that really will stop at nothing except for the protest. And I think this is why we are so proud of what we have been able to accomplish up to now, to tell them, stop, there's a limit to what you can do. But in the meantime, they cause a lot of damage.
Could you also elaborate, because before Relik talk about the issue of check and balances, because for many people outside of Israel, many say, well, they are trying to rebalancing between the judiciary and the other branches of, but we know that Israel doesn't have a constitution, and you worked about that about the draft of constitution with the Israeli Democracy Institute. I wanted you to elaborate more about these issues of check and balances and the lack of them, of defined limits within the Israeli system.
You're right. Israel doesn't have a constitution. The UK also doesn't have a constitution, but the UK has something very special, and that is, it's called "It's Not Done." It's a culture of restraint. Also, the two chambers. So if the parliament goes crazy, House of Lords can say, look, let's look at it, let's talk about it, etc. In Israel, nothing. The basic laws which were enacted, and during the year, the hope was that they will become the basis of a constitution. And you're right, I was busy, among other people, for 5 years to draft constitution by consensus. And we thought we wasted our time, because eventually the politicians wouldn't agree to sign it. But I think people will come back to it, because they're talking now about the need, and everybody realizes the lack of constitution. But you're right. With the lack of constitution, Chief Justice Aaron Barak in the 90s took the Supreme Court a bit too far into the realm of politics. And a more conservative jurist thought that the court should not go into the issue of values, social issues, etc. This should be left to the politician. But Barak, Aaron Barak, being so charismatic and world-renowned judge, etc., had his way. So the pendulum went a bit too far to the course of or direction of the judiciary branch of government. And even the reasonability issue, Ilat HaSvirut, that they are now debating, and the whole thing. I could live with a reform that said the court should intervene in personal decisions, like to appoint, if somebody wants to appoint his son to be a minister, the court should say, no, it's not reasonable. But if the government wants to make a decision on a political level, or state level, or diplomatic level, etc., the court shouldn't, or the court should be very careful not to go into that. I could live with this. The problem with this, what they call judicial reform, is that they're not talking about minor changes that people could have lived with. And they never said they're going to do it. You know, they dumped it on us. One day, you know, Levin sat in a studio and said, "This is what we're going to do," and then he exposed not a minor reform that people would say, "You know what? I can live with it." No, he really exposed a whole revolution of the constitutional basis of our democracy. What if Levin, and people say Levin, it's Netanyahu. If Netanyahu and Levin have their way, Israel will not be a democracy as we know it, because the government, which already controls the Knesset, 1/3 of the Knesset members are ministers. So where's the division of power? Nothing. They control the Knesset already, and now they want to control the Supreme Court. This is Hungary, and this is Putin's, and this is Erdogan, and this is Poland. And therefore, people won't agree with it. The hope is that they will realize that the people are against it, and then after when the Knesset convenes again, they will come to the senses, and they'll take a step back and say, you know what? Okay, it didn't work, but we need some issues. Let's sit down and talk. And the president tried to do it, but you can't do it when they put a gun into your hand and says, now let's compromise. You don't compromise in this kind of situation. By the way, you mentioned the draft constitution that we worked 5 years. I remember endless sessions about every pitchifkas, you know, every single issue. And people would come, people would talk, you listen to experts, you borrow from other countries' experience. Here, nothing. They just dumped the whole thing on us, and now they say, take it or leave it, because we won the elections. This is not democracy.
Thank you. Also, like, I think it's many ways it's even worse than Orban and Poland, because at least Orban and Poland, they don't have all the messianic thing within, and the absurd extremist, ultra-nationalist, ultra-religious agenda. And I wanted to ask to Relik Shafir, how this both judicial overall, this judicial coup that is being put in place, and at the same time this rising of like ultra-religious messianic forces in Israel, how can this impact both Israel's security and Israel international standing? Because I'm not sure that these like ultra-religious settlers have figured out very well how to deal with, you know, country security and stuff like that.
Can I add just one question?
Later, at the end, we will have a space for like question and all.
Okay.
Please, Relik.
Well, the question alluded to the Messianic or ultra-right. They're not ultra-Orthodox. They're ultra-right. They are, in their own view, they're Zionists. But they have a dream of rebuilding the temple, but not just a factual temple, They would like to impose the promise, God's promise of Israel to control the whole land. And in fact, when Smotrich, who's our finance minister and a minister in the Ministry of Defense, had spoken in London a couple of months ago, he had a map in front of him, which included Jordan as well. So their idea is go back not to the Second Temple, but back to King David's times, when he had a pretty large country following the conquests. So the idea is to go back 3,000 years ago and enforce the laws of the Bible, the laws of the Halakha, which came obviously after King David's time. And they don't see democracy as something that should be respected, because there was not a democracy in King David's time. I know it sounds absurd. They have it's a little bit like the evangelists who are waiting for the Armageddon to take place. If you know the story of the evangelists. So it's these are fundamentalists who want to take us 3,000 years back, including the legal system, the judicial system, do away with democracy and so on. And in actual fact is annex Judea and Samaria with about 2.5 million Arabs without giving them political and civil rights. This goes against what has taken place in the Western world in the last 300 plus years, since John Locke in 1689 wrote his thesis on this. And the whole Western world is working with the fact that there are basic human rights, and the empowerment of the government is controlled by the checks and balances of the three branches. This has no, they have no interest in this. This is the opposing views of these members of government. The fact that they're in a way forcing it up on Netanyahu, whether he likes it or not, and brought up Israelis who are liberals, Democrat liberals, out in the streets. And this has actually created and manifested itself in the fact of rising of a new brand of Israelis who are aware of what the issues of belonging to the Western world, the lessons learned from the Second World War, that created the UN Charter in 1948, by the way, written mostly by Eleanor Roosevelt and René Cassin, who's a French Jew, who's part of Kol Israel Achim in France. So these are Jewish charters, and this is who we are. And all of a sudden, we're being led by people who want to take us back 3,000 years ago. That's why we're out in the streets. That's why the intelligentsia is out in the streets. And because we have the power, we're not going to let those clerics take us back 3,000 years.
So we could say that that these ultra-nationalist Meir Kahane-style people, we could say they constitute an existential threat to the existence of the State of Israel, if their ideas are imposed.
And by the way, I'll just add one more thing. One of the reasons that the International Court of Law in The Hague, who put out some restraining orders or tried to detain Israelis when they reach Europe for crimes against humanity, the local courts, especially in the UK, had said that they believe that the Israeli court system is strong enough and independent enough such that if some officers have committed some crimes, they would be tried in Israel itself. By changing the rules of the game and the judicial system, this puts a lot of officers and soldiers in harm's way if they reach Europe. This is another part of the story that is being disregarded altogether by this government.
Thank you.
Okay, you asked about what happens if they have their way.
Yes, if you think that if they have their way, this could pose an existential threat to Israel.
Oh, definitely yes. I mean, in more than one way. If they have their way, and Israel annexes Judea, Samaria, or the West Bank, and takes in 2.5 million Arabs without giving them equal rights, then Israel becomes the South Africa of the apartheid time. And we saw that the world didn't accept South Africa of the apartheid, period. I mean, by the way, the only difference is America. America supports Israel, whatever happens, or up till now, and things are changing. If we see the most pro-Israeli president, Joe Biden, saying this is too much, and he invites Tom Friedman to carry the message, and every channel we get the message that America doesn't is not only not happy, but there are talks now about, okay, but what about the military aid to Israel, etc. Forget about Netanyahu. No one here in the right senses will let this happen, and therefore I'm optimistic. I mean, these people, Relik is right. They are messianic. They really think there should be a halachic state here. By the way, with all the ramifications for women, gay people, it will take us back, and you can't do it without tearing Israel apart. So it's not going to happen, but it will definitely cause us a lot of trouble. But I don't want to spoil the party even more, but Relik and I represent here only one segment of the Israeli society. We have the Messianic, the Smotrich, the Ben-Gvir, etc. We have the ultra-Orthodox who couldn't care less about all this. They say, of course, they want halachic state, but only when the Messiah comes. So don't push anything now. And what they care is about to get their own benefits from us and stay in their own, some call it ghetto, some will call it community or whatever. And then we have the Arabs, who are not Zionists, obviously, who have their own ideas and dreams. And their main thing, if we were smart, we would make them the happiest people in Israel, because they would be the ambassadors to all the Arabs. You want to live in peace with the Jews, see what you get. Instead, we kind of push them down. And then there is a large segment of the society who support Bibi Netanyahu and the Likud. We shouldn't forget that. I mean, people voted in big numbers, mainly, I think, because they hate somebody, not because they are for something, but they are against something. They're against Ashkenazi, old-time privilege, hegemony, whatever you want. So we have those tribes, and now we are, Relik and I and others are very proud to see all those people protesting around us. But I'm reminding you that there are many others who don't share these things, and we need to really talk them into joining us. Maybe Relik would like to share some of his experience because he's now involved in something of a discourse, trying to maybe find common ground with other groups. You're muted. You're muted.
No, I'm with you.
Sorry, if you want to, yes, to reply, Israel, please.
Yes, we have been meeting with some ultra-right or right-wing religious people in the last few months through their requests to meet with pilots, and have been able to reach agreement with a more moderate religious rabbis and communities and some politicians and right-wing people, where we signed a common ground or a common paper describing that Israel is a liberal democracy, a Jewish liberal democracy, based on human rights, based on personal freedoms, equality, and supporting the three branches of government with a strong judicial. And we have been able to take the people on the right and those who are religious, who believe that people are more important than land. That means the unity of the Jews of Israel is more important than a piece of land or controlling the Arabs. This is hard for them on the right, but unity is more important than anything else. And we've been able to come to terms. We're meeting. We have a big meeting coming up on this Tuesday with prominent leaders, the religious communities. This does not go into ultra-right, but on the moderate right, people who are settlers, but are more on the liberal side. I wouldn't call them liberals, but leaning towards liberalism and understanding the Jewish values that are said by the prophets have so much emphasis on equality, on treating non-Jews in a fair and sound way, that had made them decide that it is more important to follow these than follow these Messianic groups. And so there's a splinter within the religious on the right, not a big splinter, but people are starting to move over and understand that this will lead them nowhere. It's a road to nowhere, and they're coming to terms that you should differentiate between dreams and reality, not just political reality, but also human reality, social reality. We're seeing more and more of them appear in the protests. We're seeing more and more of them try to find ways and means to talk and to try to see if we can come to terms. A judicial reform, sure, but not a change in the power scheme between the government and judicial. So this is it makes me optimistic. I'm one of the leaders of this particular movement. It's not easy to meet with people on the right and sit down with them and find common ground in one day, and the next day go out to the streets in protests. But this is what it takes to live in this country and come to terms with the problems and find common ground.
Thank you. I would like now to leave some space to questions. So if the people who are interested in asking a question may raise their hand through the button on Zoom. I know that there was first Fabio and then Amy Rosenthal. Please, Fabio, go. Fabio.
Do you think that the economy will basically determine the fall of the governments? I mean, the worsening of the economy. Do you think that that may be one of the factors?
I'm ready when you want.
I think that I think / hope, okay, that the government will fall because of this or because of that. Whatever comes first, I'm happy with it. Of course, I don't like to see our economy, which really was booming and prospering, falling apart because of this. But if, you know, sometime in order to cure a disease, you need to make a painful operation. And therefore, yes, to your question, I think economy, the pilots on one hand and the reservists, the pressure from America, the economy, together, very powerful mixture. One of them will play because look, Netanyahu he himself was a finance minister back in 2003 or 4, I believe, and he did well, very well, when he was there because he knows what it is, and he came up with the idea of the fat man, which is the public service, and all those parasites are sitting on the lean man, the high tech, which pulls the economy. He knows all this. And now, of course, he's bluffing. He's saying, look, it's not so bad. They didn't take our status yet. All the signs are that if he goes on, economy will really take a blow, and therefore I agree that this is one of the main forces that will force him to step back.
Thank you.
I might add that the Israeli economy power comes from two sources, one of which is the military, I would say, establishment or industry that sells anything from drones to electronics. And the other one is high tech, where we sell electrons, basically. These two powertrains will continue because of the human resources. But these are also the people who are vehemently against the government. So there's a clash of capabilities on the one hand and social, I would say, process on the other hand. And this is something that could be reversed. But the longer we wait with reversing this, the more the impact will be. But the human resources are still there. So economically, we would suffer in the short term, but the rebounding ability is still there.
Thank you. Fabio Nicolucci, then Amy Rosenthal, and then
Yes.
Adam.
Thank you. I'm a political advisor here in Italy, and I think that the kernel of your struggle is so strong because you are acting politically, in the sense that Netanyahu has been one of the greatest politicians of your country of the latest 20, 30 years. Unfortunately, I can add, but he is very strong in politics. Where is his strength? he has been able to construct a large political alliance based on Islamophobia before, on terrorism, counterterrorism, and so on, and then on the reading of the situation for the security of Israel. Where is the I have a suggestion on this. So you are building, you are trying to build a larger coalition to beat him, and this is the good path in my idea. The problem is that he's saying which is the strongest of his how would say ideas or arguments in the fight, in the democratic fight you are sustaining. He's saying, he's making an equation between I won the election, I have a direct mandate, a blank mandate, which is not, because you have an indirect mandate in democracy. You have you elect MPs or member of parliament because they have to interpret the mandate. You don't have to mandate the mandate of doing everything. That's where he was wrong. So I think you should you might break his bones in saying you are claiming that you had a mandate, the democratic mandate on this, which is wrong. Or this is the polls demonstrate this large demonstration, the strength of the movement, and you are building a very strong and large alliance. Also being with the Hatikva, you took back the flag of Israel, which was his private possession for many years. And now you should see the bluff of what he's saying, that he has the majority of the people because he has
Fabio, can you go straight to the question, please? Because the question
is, why don't you ask for a referendum, breaking this spell, saying you don't have the majority of the people. You have the majority of the parliamentary seats, which is not the same. The majority of the people is with us. If you are sure that you have the majority of the people, let's call the referendum of the first reasonableness law which has passed. The text is there. If you win, you will have our support in the government. Let's call the bluff. That's my suggestion for you, because this is the strongest point he can make in making an equation between the majority of the seats with equals, which is not, with the majority of the people.
Okay, Relik or Uri, which one of you wants to answer?
I think it's a great idea, and I'm sure Netanyahu will not accept it because he knows, as you said, we used to call him the magician because he is the most experienced politician around. And of course, he will not accept it because he looks at the polls. And by the way, he runs his own public opinion, deep public opinion. He knows perfectly well he's going to lose, and therefore he will not do it. But you touched upon a very important point, which is raised against us protesters, saying you don't accept the results of the elections. I mean, and you are the revolutionaries. You are the ones who trying to make a coup by forcing the government to change its policy, although you lost the elections. Now, this is Peronism, after Peron. Like, this is what the people want. But there are, as you suggested, scientific ways to find out what the people want. And the Israeli people today, they don't want this judicial reform. And by the way, you called him the most experienced and the greatest, etc. I know with some reservations, but we called him the magician, and I think he pulled one trick too many, one trick too far. This, sometimes you can look at the magician from the side and you see how he does the tricks. I think we caught him. miscalculating, and by pulling out this or letting Levin do this judicial reform, he really miscalculated, which meaning he lost it already. So this is not the Netanyahu that we know before. He will not listen to the people directly because he is going to lose. And but there's one thing he knows, and that is to pull, some would say, cheap tricks to appease the people. I don't know if you remember, we had the big social protests and unrest in 2011. He did two things, genius. First, he appointed a committee, the Trachtenberg Committee. Yes, we'll consult with you, we'll talk with you, that kind of put an end to it. Then the next thing he did, he brought back Gilad Shalit, the soldiers who were kept by Hamas, by freeing, I don't know how many Palestinian prisoners, 1,000 maybe?
1,005.
Yes. Contrary to everything he wrote about terrorism, you never give in to terror, etc. So Netanyahu, and this is, I think Relik will agree with me, some of us are afraid that he will use the security issue to come back to, I'm your leader, I'm the responsible statement, etc. So we're watching with a lot of suspicion, and we hope that he falls.
Relik, if you want to add something, otherwise we go to the question of Amy Rosenthal. Okay, Amy, go.
She froze.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, no, my computer froze for a second. Well, I want to ask this question. Look, Israel in the past, I think that tried to have a centrist government. So there was an attempt with Kadima, then there was an attempt with Kaluna, no? One day to being despaired and the next optimistic. But okay, seeing that as an old Labour party advocate, Uri, member, the left is in a bad position in Israel at the moment. So the way I'm thinking,
And
your interview. Oh, can you hear me?
Go back from the left is in a bad place. After that, we lost your second. No, now you're muted. There was like you froze for a second. Go now.
Okay, what I think is needed is a centrist party. And is this possible? I mean, I remember, Uri, when you did the interview with Vittorio, you talked about how and is there any figure, or is this a possibility that you could bring unity? Because I think after this government, people are sick of the extremes. I think like the Via is a centrist government. I don't know if the both of you would agree, or if there's something already in the works, or this is my question.
Yeah, I think the best thing that can happen to Israel is that Netanyahu leaves us alone. I know it's easy said than done, but maybe, by the way, his trial is going on. So don't forget that. Even if it takes a lot of time, at one point, they will come to a decision. And therefore, if Netanyahu leaves the scene, then Likud with Gantz, with Lapid, is I think what Israelis want. Israelis, in poll after poll, first of all, they give Gantz a lot of points because he's considered a unifier, a moderate, a man of the middle, etc. Also goes well with the ultra-Orthodox because he's from a religious background. So the problem is Netanyahu. Really, I can't start telling you how, I hate to say, poisonous what he does to the Israeli society recently is really poisonous. And therefore, if you take and look at how all these people next to him, I mean, are like they're so afraid to say something, to have a spine and nothing. Look, I worked for Yitzhak Rabin, okay? Yitzhak Rabin had two people in his office, Eitan Haber and Shimon Sheves. They told him things he didn't want to hear. Every day. And he used to shout at them and they shouted back. And then, by the way, when he was the chief of staff of the IDF, his general staff was composed of generals, Arik Sharon, Ezer Weizmann, Talik, people, giants. And he was proud of them instead of Netanyahu, who was putting the dwarfed around him so he can be the Gulliver towering over them. Netanyahu is the problem. And as long as he's around, it's very difficult to make a deal with him. But the direction is definitely there. This is what Israelis want. By the way, we had a government before Netanyahu based off all kind of segments that worked peacefully. They didn't fight with each other. They weren't busy all the time inciting one Israeli against the other. People had this period of sanity, and I think we'll get that again, but we need to take out Netanyahu first.
Thank you. Israel, you want to add?
Yes, this is, even though Netanyahu actually used the different factions within Israeli society and pitted them one against the other in so many ways. It even goes back a long time when he convinced Sheldon Adelson to start printing a newspaper solely supporting Netanyahu, which was given for free, and actually was able to fight the media in ways that were not known in Israel before. So he brought in his ability, political ability, but also was instrumental in creating rifts and breaking solidarity within the public in Israel, and using frictions that were there before, but he used them to his own good. If you remember in 1996, they sent out the story that Shimon Peres's mother was an Arab, things that nature, misinformation, disinformation, slandering, all kinds of stories. So this is he's been going on, and he's a master of this. This is why Uri called him earlier poisonous, in that he is able to poison the public arena using the social media and so on. And we know that social media is poisonous. So he's really used it to his advantage. I think once he's removed, things are not going to go back to normal soon, but there's a middle faction in Israel built with Gantz, with Lapid, and with the Likud, who are able to create a coalition that will take Israel out of the dire situation we're at. So this is the optimistic side. I think even Netanyahu would like to see this happening, except that he's so up to his neck in his legal woes that this dictates his policies. You asked before whether you can show this to the public. Well, some of the public is still loyal to Netanyahu. The polls now show a clear majority to the opposition. But as you know, polls are a little bit like perfume. You can smell them, but you can't actually use them.
Shimon Peres used to say, only smell it, don't drink it. He knew what he's talking about because he never won an election. Even if he ran against himself, he wouldn't win. But guys, we don't want to leave you with the pessimistic note. I mean, protest is strong. Israelis are realizing something needs to be happening, and it's going to happen. And when we hopefully meet again, things will happen.
Thank you. We have time for the last quick question of Adam. Adam, you want to mute?
Thank you. I'm a European Commission official. Now, when I look at what in detail is being said in the judicial reform, I have to admit that actually the reformers have some points. They have some justification. Now, I was interested to hear that even you gentlemen who are involved in leading the protest do accept that to a degree the Supreme Court has excessive power. So, concretely, what sort of proposal could be made for a more progressive type of judicial reform?
I think I mentioned it before, changing the reasonability clause issue a bit, so it deals only with personal decisions. By the way, as we speak, they passed a law, I mean the coalition, they passed a law, they called it basic law, just like that. Basic law should be considered higher than regular law. They just called it basic law only for one purpose, and that is to allow the brother of Aryeh Deri, the leader of Shas, to run for a rabbi in Tiberias. You know, in our face. They just did it. So a reasonable person would expect that the court should intervene, and they did, and say, guys, this is not acceptable, and it can't be. So to your question, I would accept that. There's a question of the committee that appoints the justices. I can see some reason in the claim that in the past the court didn't really represent the Israeli society. And I'm not implying that you should pick my grocer here next door to be a justice. But there are ways in which one can really look broader and wider, take a wider perspective, because the allegation was that these people, all from Rechavia, those of you who know Jerusalem, you know, the little neighborhood where all the justices come, and I bring in your son to be my to work with me, etc., etc. So as I said before, had they proposed something and would put it in their campaign, in the platform, in the election campaign, so that people knew these guys, if they are elected, They're going to push for a reform of the judicial system. People could have the time to look at it, to debate it. Nothing. They just dumped it on us. And part of the rage against it is not only about the content, but also about the way they did it. Not caring to really put it on the public agenda in a serious manner.
Thank you. Israel, you wanted to reply or?
Sorry, I was away for a second. Could you please repeat the question?
Yes. When I look into the details of what's really being said on
Okay, I remember that question now, yes. I think a reform is due. It should be welcomed. And I'm not just saying that any reform is welcome, but some of the problems the judicial system has, which being more representative, I think everybody agrees that this is a good idea. For instance, we have about a third in the number of judges per population compared to the OECD. And this actually implies that many of the court rulings take much longer than they should, because there's only a third of the judges sitting in, so they should enlarge the number of judges, etc., etc. So there is no doubt that some changes should take place, but these should be agreed upon on a wide scale, in the sense that they should have a large majority of the public agree with those changes. And remember that Israel does not have a Knesset or a parliament, which is separated from the government. And so we don't really have three branches. We don't have a constitution. So these should be done very carefully. And I think they will get a support of most Israelis, but not the way they were done, pushed down our throats. And you may not know why they were pushed down our throats in such a short term of times, because the government wanted to control the judges that will change or will take the places of 3 of the retiring judges, and control who becomes president of the Supreme Court, who chooses the judges that will read into Netanyahu's appeal. This is why it was pushed through in such a short manner, and actually infuriated the public, because it was a personal thing pushed by Netanyahu. This is the I would say the heart of the matter of this whole reform, that wasn't opposed by people at all. Only the reasons behind the push and the way it was crafted was seen as such a acidic manipulation that sent people out to the streets. So I think, as an answer to your question, sure, changes, reforms on a wide scale, not too wide, but certainly more than one vote over the critical mass. We're talking about, let's say, 2/3 majority for changes in the reform. I'm sure we can reach those, but these take time and they take expertise, and not pushing it down the throats. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Uri Dromi and Relik Shafir for being with us tonight. And this event will obviously was recorded, so it will be available also for the people who didn't manage to attend. And thank you to all the others, IAF, Brigadier Italy, Rabin community who contributed in organizing of the event. And thank you again for being with us tonight. Laila Tov to all.
Thank
you.